Welcome to the Idon Active Health Show with your host, Khalil Smith, and I have my guest, Wesley Owens. He's an investor, entrepreneur, mentor, and at the end of this conversation, I want my audience to know how to use VA to improve their business, streamline it, grow it, and just be the best business owners, entrepreneurs, anything you do, just be the best of your ability. So we'll get right back into this conversation after this introduction. How you doing today, Wesley?
Oh man, I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm alive. I'm thankful.
Hey man, that's always a good day, right?
Yeah, I love being grateful. That's what life is about. That's how you get over the hardships.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So today I would like to talk about your business, OmniPro. I was looking at your website. It looks amazing. I love what you're doing, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, legal representatives, real estate professionals with VA, virtual assistants. For my audience who don't know what VA is, let's talk about what is OmniPro and what do you do? How do you service people?
Sure. So OmniPro is a global virtual staffing agency. Global in that the talent comes, you've heard the term offshore. There's also the term nearshore, right? So the talent comes both offshore countries, nearshore countries, as well as other North American countries, right? We always think of the US, but obviously there's also Canada and Mexico and some Central American countries, Costa Rica and the like. So what we do is we source talent from all of those different areas, different countries, and we provide that talent to clients who are looking to scale their businesses, who need a little extra support, who perhaps want to start or launch new segments of business, right? A lot of times you'll see small businesses, it was the owner's idea, it was the owner's dream to do this. And so they make widgets really well, but they didn't really think about maybe the accounting portion, right? So that helps. Or they didn't really think about the customer service portion, right? And now, of course, business is global. And so you have to be able to provide customer service, not only on the telephone, but also through email support and perhaps even chat support. And a lot of companies have gone to 24/7 chat support. So that chat support oftentimes is done either nearshore or offshore. And so that's one of the areas that we work in.
Okay. Before we get into a little more, tell me how you started this business and like how you started your entrepreneurial journey. Because
Sure.
I want people to know a little background.
Sure. So I'm a product of HBCUs. I always have to say that first, right? I went to the capstone of Black education. And for those of you wondering what that is, that's Howard University. Come on, man, you know what it is. After Howard, I started working. I started my career in IT. And, it was during, back then it was the .com era, right? So I worked in IT for a little while, got my skills set up and started my first venture when I was about 26 or 27. Did really well. I always joke and say I was the first one of my friends who owned a Rolex. In my mind, that meant I made it, right? Come on, man. That's as good as it gets. I owned a Rolex and I didn't work on Fridays.
That's the goal.
Hey, man, that was the goal. I was living the life. And so, eventually I decided after having that business for a couple of years, I was going to sell it. And I sold it for what I felt like at the time was a lot of money, right? I made about $500,000. I was like, I'm in the money. Pivoted from there into the real estate space and did really well in real estate. Single family homes, apartments, multifamily developments, both freestanding and ground up development. So, did really well. And until the bubble burst and I was highly leveraged. Didn't know what that word meant at the time, but I absolutely was the walking example of highly leveraged, and found myself starting all over again. So bumped around for a couple of years, trying different ideas, right, different things. Hit on the staffing space and began to develop yet another staffing agency at the time, and it did really well. It grew to 20 different cities or 21 different cities over the course of about 4 or 5 years. But it was very much a traditional brick and mortar staffing agency.
How did you get introduced into that, to staffing agency? You don't see everyone doing that.
You don't. And so I'll tell you exactly. And it's the most honest answer you'll probably hear from everybody, from anyone, right? It's a two-part answer. First of all, I was broke. Let's start there. I was broke. And so Damon John has a book called The Power of Broke. If you've never read it, it's a great read. It's 100% accurate. When you are broke, you absolutely have to come up with something. And that's exactly the position I was in. I was broke. The second thing that put me into the staffing space was I had children, right? I had kids. And, not unlike a lot of other people, I had child support payments. And I was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to make these child support payments support my children and take care of myself at the same time. And because of my history in real estate and some other things, my child support payments were supersized, as we'll call it, right? I mean, you hear people all the time talking about how unfair their child support payments were. I'm going to say mine were really unfair, right? But I had to deal with it. And so I said, I just don't know how to make these child support payments and take care of myself at the same time. And literally, this was my thought. I said, I need something where people work for me, but I get the money, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to have enough jobs to take care of these child support payments. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I think that's called staffing. But I'd never done it before, and I wasn't familiar with the business model, but I was pretty sure that's what that's what it was called. And so as I started to investigate it, I started to realize absolutely it's called staffing. And these are all the different levels to it. These are all the different ways you can do it. And and it's one of the fastest business models out there as far as accumulating cash flow, wealth, all those types of things, and scale, obviously.
I like the one thing you pointed out, like you found a solution, something that can help, you researched it, you verified what it was, and you found a business model so you can actually do it. That's inspiring. A lot of people, they will quit at that moment. Like, I can't do it.
I couldn't afford
too much work.
I couldn't afford to quit. Couldn't afford it, man. I could not afford it.
Yeah, you're really an entrepreneur, actually just going right through it, overcoming adversities. I respect that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Another question. Why should a person use a virtual assistant? Like tell me some concrete reasons, just in case my audience don't know if they're ready for it.
Sure. So I think people start out in their line of work, whatever their business is, right? You start out in that line of work because that's your thing, right? Oftentimes you see people take their hobby and turn it into a business. Oftentimes you see people do what I did. You research a business model. You say, hey, listen, I like that. That works for me. And you turn that into a business. I tell people all the time, there's a difference between having a business and having a company, right? Most people start out with a business, and what you really want is you want a company. You envision a company, but in order to get from one level to the next, you have to be able to scale, right? The best way, the fastest way, the most, the safest way to scale is through the use of a virtual assistant, right? Because you have the ability to have part-time help, because let's face it, until your business takes off, most people can only afford part-time help, right? You're a business owner. How many times have you thought to yourself, if I just had somebody could do this, I could do the rest, right?
A lot.
We all think that, right? I remember when I started my first staffing business, I said, if I just had somebody who could do this, I could do the rest. Well, as your business grows, then you go, well, geez, if I had somebody who could do this and this, I could do the rest. Well, what happens is you can get, a virtual assistant on a part-time basis who can help you do your invoicing, right? Who can help you do your customer service, who can help you take care of your calendar, who can help you, complete applications or whatever it is that you need to have done, right? But you're not having to pay full freight, right? A lot of people don't realize when you start to take on the burden of employees, you have to pay, employee their payroll taxes, right? A lot of times employees are looking for benefits. As a small business, oftentimes you can't afford benefits. You can't afford to pay benefits. If you could afford to pay them, they're not going to be benefits that most of your employees would take, mainly because as a small business, the benefit companies are not going to give you, the insurance carriers are not going to give you the ideal rates because you're too small, right? If Anthem Healthcare or United Healthcare is offering benefits to OmniPro VA, and we've got 20 lives or 50 lives or however many we have, we're not going to get the same rate as your local county government or your state government because they just have more lives, so they get a better rate, right? It's economies of scale. There are a lot of hidden factors that come into play when you start dealing with employees, even on a part-time basis. So if you have a virtual assistant, it allows you to scale your business without necessarily having to worry about, employee related concerns, HR, benefits, anything like that. You still get your objectives met without having to worry about the rest of the employee burden, if you will.
That's understandable. How about how do you go about the vetting process? So let's say you get a customer, someone calls in for a consultation, they're looking for particular VA. How do you go about your vetting process of linking one VA to that business owner, entrepreneur?
Great question. It's all about chemistry, right? So we're always pipelining candidates. And so what happens is, if you call and you say, hey, listen, I'm looking for someone to help me with my accounting. Well, I've been pipelining, accounting candidates for the last 6 months. So what I do is I make it my business to sometimes sit in on some of those interviews so that I don't just see the candidate's resume. I actually know the candidate's personality so that I keep certain business areas. I keep certain candidates from certain business areas top of mind, right? So if someone calls in and says, hey, listen, I need a dynamic, EA. I don't need a VA. I need an EA. Like I need somebody who's on top of their game. Oh, boom. I just interviewed someone. I know they're great. Boom. This will be helpful. We always try and look for people who are at least college educated, right? You're looking for candidates who have good business experience, but you're also looking for candidates who are, English, they're fluent in English first. But if I get somebody who's bilingual or trilingual, that's even better, right? Because those people become ideal for customer service roles. So, I tend to look at a candidate, not just their resume. I'm interested in their personality, their energy, what's going on in their lives, all of it, right? Because that helps me say, okay, look, this is going to be the best candidate for this role. And maybe they're applying for customer service because that's all they've ever done, but they've got a tremendous phone voice. And I feel like, sometimes those customer service skills are transferable into maybe an inside sales role, right? So and sometimes I lean to my own experience, right? I have had people walk in my office and apply for certain jobs. And I've said, hey, listen, I know what you're applying for. You're not going to get that job. I can tell you that right now because I'm not going to hire you for it. Because I want to hire you for this and you're so much better for this. And I know you don't know that because you've never done that job, but trust me, your skill set is this. And, years later, they've come back and said, oh my God, I never would have tried that, right? thank you for whatever you saw in me. And now I'm down the line and I love this. And, and it's a new career. And so I get a little bit of joy out of really helping people along in their career. It's not necessarily just about putting butts in seats or, filling roles. It's a little bit more to it than that, for me anyway.
That's a great leadership quality too, knowing what someone's good at, just from like talking to them and viewing what areas they're really good at and just placing them in that role. Sometimes somebody might want a role, but maybe it's not the right one for them. But you notice something in them that may translate into this other role that is more suitable.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes that's what people, be honest about it. What happens is we only write resumes a few times in our lives. Think about that. Most people have never had more than 5 professional jobs, right? You think about people who get a job and, you got a job out of college and you've just been there for 10 or 15 years. Maybe you switch one more time, maybe you switch twice. Next thing you know, you're retired. That's it, right? I mean, I know people who got a job working at IBM right out of college, and 20 years later, right, they had to go find something else to do. They found one more position. That's it. They had 2 jobs their entire life. So, you just, to me, as people send you resumes, you start to review resumes, you really do start to get a feel for not only what you're good at, but what you could be potentially good at. And I just want to get a feel for what it is you really want to do, right? Most people don't go to work because they love their job. Most people go to work because they got to pay bills. But if you happen to go to work and love your job at the same time, then in my book, you're winning. So let's go figure out what that position is, what that role is, and give you that role, because that's the role you're going to exceed in, because that's the role you love the most.
And at that point, it doesn't even feel like work if you love it.
Hey, man, it's vacation every day. It's vacation every day. You never skip work because it doesn't feel like work to you.
I do want to ask you a question. So I already asked you how you assess the VAs, but what questions do you ask your business owners, entrepreneurs, or anyone seeking a VA so you have the right VA for that person? What question do you ask that customer?
I'm interested most often in what's your overall goal? How do you envision this person or any VA helping you get to your overall goal, right? Because, we had a situation recently, new client, and, has a franchise doing really well, bought a franchise that was targeted to one type of work, discovered that the other type of work is where she's actually most successful. And in asking her, okay, what's your goal for a VA and what do you want them to do? We started to realize that her goal was absolutely out of line with the franchise that she bought. So because of that, we had to, we had to help her form a new company. We bought some lists, put her on a new outreach platform. Like, we completely remade her business. And now she's completely thriving, right? Because she's on consistent email marketing. We've got a social media management person who is a complete rock star on her team. And it was one of those things I was like, listen, I know you've never met her. I said, but when you meet this lady, you're going to love her. I was like, she's a rock star. And we had that initial meeting and she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I was like, I told you, like, this lady is a rock star. And she was like, this lady has me doing stuff I've never heard of. And I was like, right. But that's, but again, that's their job, right? Most of us think of social media as, Facebook, Instagram, what can we do with it, right? But when you actually have somebody behind your social media, they're doing tips and tricks that, will make your Instagram page stand on its ear. And that's what you need. That's what makes you stand out. That's what makes you look the most professional, right? And those are the things that, that we do to help entrepreneurs. And so I always start with, what is your goal, right? Because if I know what your goal is, I can work backwards from that goal and line you up with the right VA. or quite frankly, the right team of VAs, right? Because sometimes it's not just one person. Sometimes it's multiple people. And sometimes that's the fix. So it depends on what the goal is. And I just go backwards from there.
That's like the perfect answer. Just assessing their goals and see what works and reassessing it where you need to, so they can have the right VA that they're looking for. So everyone happy on both sides. Is that a part of, like, I was looking at your website, is that like the MVA, the multimedia virtual assistant that you're referring to for social media?
Right. So
Okay.
we have the social media assistants, the multimedia virtual assistants. People with podcasts, very popular, right? YouTube channels, very popular. Sometimes you have to have people go in and edit video, edit audio, edit all those things, put it together, and really, really make it pop. That's a part of what we're doing.
Oh yeah, that's definitely needed. I know I need that on my team sometimes. I'm over here overworking. So what about I know you have LVA and BVA.
Yes. So legal virtual assistants, right? Legal virtual assistants, the legal space is kind of a unique animal, right? You see a lot of these attorneys, especially in the personal injury space, who are just absolutely screaming from the rooftops, call me, call me, call me. Well, they get a lot of leads in, right? But at the end of the day, you have to massage those leads. You have to stay in touch with those customers or clients. You have to, do all of that. So what we do is we are high level. I don't know if you know the term high level, but high level is a CRM package. So we are high level resellers. So we can build out a high level CRM specifically for law firms to help manage their customer database. Hiring VAs who are trained paralegals who can then help in preparing legal documents and things like that, doing electronic filings, right? Things that, again, your attorneys spend a lot of time in court. Your attorneys spend a lot of time, shaking hands, preparing for the next case, that sort of thing. They don't always have the time to do their filings. That's why they have paralegals. They certainly don't always have the time to do their marketing. And, you can have ads on the radio and all those kinds of things, ads on the television. When those leads start to come in, you have to be able to handle those leads and manage those leads. So that's what we're doing. BVA, same thing as business virtual assistants. Listen, I tell people all the time, when you're in business and you have a staff, right? And as that staff comes or grows, rather, there's one day of the week that comes every 7 days, and that's payday, right? Payroll. Hey, look, Friday comes every 7 days. The last thing that anybody wants to hear on Friday is what? My bad. Didn't know. Nobody wants to hear that, right? Again, nobody got in business so they could figure out how to do payroll. Nobody got in business so they could figure out how to do accounting, right? Nobody did that. You got in business because you were good at making widgets, or you were good at, providing whatever this service is. The rest of that back end stuff, like, I didn't get in business for this. And oftentimes most people don't understand exactly what handling a back office entails, right? That was one of the strengths of when I had my brick and mortar business. And that's one of the things that I've carried over now. We absolutely handle payroll, accounting, benefits, all that stuff on the back end for small business owners. And we do that because that gives the small business owner the opportunity. We take that burden off of them, gives them the opportunity to focus on other things. And if you've never set up a 401k plan, it's probably not something you want to be trying to figure out in the midst of making widgets, right?
Not at all.
If you've never done payroll, it's not something you want to be trying to figure out when you bought this company. And it's like, well, how do we get them paid? I don't know. When Friday tomorrow? Yeah, it is. Most people don't realize that in order for payroll to happen on Friday, that money moves generally on Tuesday or Wednesday. And, you've got to go through some things to make sure it's in place on direct deposit on Friday. it's a whole dance in the back office that most people just don't want to take on. And we take that on.
I see. VAs are important now.
Super important, more important than most people realize. But it's really, DJ Khaled talks about major keys. It's a major key to success. It really is.
Exactly. Sometimes you don't want to do everything, and you may need that help from a VA who have that experience.
Absolutely.
So it's very beneficial.
Absolutely. And the honest truth is, in today's times, you don't have to do everything, right? Like I said before, you don't have to hire a VA on a full-time basis. You can do it on a part-time basis, right? And because you can do it on a part-time basis, it makes financial sense. It makes sense that you can say, hey, listen, I don't need 40 hours. If you can give me 20 hours, if you can handle this for me every week, and we can agree on a number for us to do that job for you every week, that's all there is to it, right? VA's happy, we're happy, customers happy. It's a win-win-win for everybody.
I want to ask you, how did the pandemic affect your business?
Oh, wow. Great question. So, as I mentioned to you, right, I was in the what I consider the more traditional brick and mortar staffing space, right? So we got to a point where we were in the warehouse space. Way back when I started my initial business in 2012, I initially started it as IT staffing. Realized very quickly that we would be a lot more successful in the warehouse space. So we did a pivot to the warehouse space, and it blew up, and then it grew up, and then it blew up, right? Like I said, it was 21 states all around the country, household names that you've heard of, right? Honda, Ralph Lauren, we had Lockheed Martin. Of course, we're in.
Don't mean to cut you off. How did you test that it was the best move to expand from just IT staffing? How did that come about?
Opportunities. One of the things I heard someone say a long time ago when I was very early on, they said, when you are an entrepreneur and someone comes to you and they ask you if you can do, whatever it is, right? The answer is always yes.
Okay.
Right. And I was afraid of that, honestly. Right. Lockheed Martin came to us, asked us something specific. We're in Atlanta. So MARTA was one of my first clients. They came to us, asked us for something specific. And, I remembered that. Say yes, figure it out later. And I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. And the reality was I had no clue how to do some of that stuff, right? But what I did learn is, Fortune 500 companies almost always have a national footprint. And so in order to support them, I had to figure out how to have a national footprint. And so once I figured out how to have that national footprint, my next thing was, how do I hire, how do I staff those offices in other major markets and maintain that, right? So, you start looking into VoIP technologies. You start, all of a sudden, you've got to get really specific about your email domains and your security settings and your, all those kinds of things, because all of a sudden you're really about to build a company, right? And it's going to be in a distributed environment, which is exactly what we were in. We started, again, it was just opportunity for us. They started coming to us with opportunities to handle staffing for warehouse positions. And we started doing the math. And I said, wait a second, if they take 20 people, 30 people, 50 people, and, we're making X number of dollars in margin per hour per person, this makes sense. And then you start doing that in 20 or 30 different cities, it makes total sense, right? And so, it's economies of scale on one side, and it's about efficiencies on the other. So it's like, well, how efficient can we be, and how big can that get? And we just literally, we monitored both sides, and we just played the middle, if you will.
Like that's amazing. I like how you tested it. Like that what it's all about. Testing it, looking at the numbers, seeing what's important. Like I
Absolutely.
always thought it was all about the niches, but sometimes you do have to expand globally and see
No,
where it takes you.
no, and I'm gonna tell you, when a Fortune 500 company comes to you and says, "Hey, can you do X, Y, Z?" The answer really is yes. And you really do have to be resourceful and figure it out. But you can't drop the ball because you only get that one opportunity, right? If we have more time, I would tell you about a disaster that occurred at SC Johnson, and it literally was, it was avoidable if we had had 2 more hours. But we'll save that. That's another time. That's another story for another
Oh
time,
yeah,
another day.
definitely. We'll say that for another time.
But understand that I just said SC Johnson was our client, right? And I can verify for you that it's absolutely a family company because our employee was interfacing with Mr. Johnson every day, right? So the question you asked was, how did I pivot in the pandemic?
Yes.
The answer was because, literally the face of work changed, right? Everything went virtual. And so, I, obviously in the warehouse space, COVID kind of passed around warehouses before it passed around any place else. So eventually, warehouse opportunities kind of started to diminish. You started having supply chain issues, right? We still have supply chain issues right now. And, we're still, we're 2 years outside of the initial onset of COVID, and we still have supply chain issues. So being in warehouses, I thought was going to be a little dicey. I said, hey, listen, we got to do the pandemic pivot. We did. And I just started thinking about virtual opportunities. And
How early did you do that pivot? Like right in the beginning,
no,
in the
it took
midst of the pandemic? Okay.
no, it took me a while. It took me about a year just to be able to say, okay, wait a second, this is just getting hairy. And then we started thinking about other things, right? Other business models became very popular. So, you've got the Amazon FBA stores, you've got Shopify stores, all of those business models make money, but those business models have to be supported by somebody, right?
VAs?
VAs.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
They're supported by
You know,
somebody. Because look, when you watch, pick a TikTok video. Somebody's on here talking about look, I make money in my sleep. Well, hello, if they're asleep, somebody's haven't watched the store, right?
that's a key to my audience. Yo, yeah, I need to hit this man up. Get your VA so you can make money when you're sleeping.
There you go. That's what it's about. Listen, hey, if they're making money in their sleep, somebody has to watch the store. And that's probably one of the best uses of a VA. Customer service, chat support, email support, all that kind of stuff, best use. Because if we're offshoring and nearshoring, then certainly when you're asleep on the East Coast, they're awake in other countries. And that's how you get 24/7 support.
Like that's those are gems right there. Like I thought about doing it myself, but I like to establish my SOPs first, so I
Sure.
know exactly when I do get one, I have the right structure. So
Sure.
that's important for most people when they about to do it, because I don't want anyone to just jump into getting a VA and they don't know what they want that VA to do. Because some people I can see they want them to do maybe too many things.
Absolutely. And you make a good point, right? Scope is absolutely important. SOPs are absolutely important, right? We have established SOPs for certain roles and responsibilities. But like I said, we really try and scope it out when I sit down with someone and I say, what are your goals, right? That's a very open-ended question. And I really mean your pie in the sky goals. Like, give it to me, right? Because if you say, hey, listen, I want this business to be doing X in revenue, I want it to be, whatever it is, that's fine. Where are we now? So we know where we are now. We know where we got to go. We can build a plan to get there, right? The nature of entrepreneurship absolutely is building a plane in the sky. As much as we can stay away from that, we want to. Sometimes it's unavoidable. But I also believe that the more time you spend sharpening your axe, the less time you spend chopping down the tree.
I like that.
what it is.
That's true.
That's what it is. The more time, if they give you 5 hours to chop down this tree, if you spend 4 hours sharpening that axe, it should come down with no problems. And that's what we're trying to do, right?
Preparation.
It's preparation. You got to make sure you got the right team, the right tools, the right everything to get there. Because a lot of times people do, you know where you want to go, but there are so many tools in the marketplace that, you don't realize, look, you don't have the right tools. You don't have the right, you don't have the right infrastructure. You don't have the right whatever. Well, if we can give you the right tools, the right infrastructure, getting to the moon shouldn't be a problem. You'll never get to the moon if you're driving a bike. You'll get there if you got a rocket ship.
Most definitely. I have another question. As far as payment plans, how do you go about that? Like, I was looking at your site. Like, is it a monthly, weekly, cancel anytime? How do you go about that when you bring in your customers?
Sure. So it's a weekly, but if it's not working, it's not working, right? I don't want to hold anybody to anything that they don't want to do. So obviously, we're going to have a simple contract like everybody else, but we're going to give you the opportunity to cancel it with 7 days notice. So if you say, hey, listen, this isn't really working, we've tried it. Listen, no harm, no foul. But if I'm doing my job, if we're doing our job, that day will never come. If anything, it'll be the opposite, which is, hey man, this is going great. And I need another VA for this, or I need to go this direction. I need to do this. And I need you to help me here, do this, do that. One of the things that you'll see, if you visit my LinkedIn profile, I call myself, the $1 billion business coach. And I do that because I oftentimes coach guys who are looking at different sorts of tech ventures and those kinds of things. And, I've coached at this point 2 people who've gone on to have $1 billion tech firms. So, I feel like I'm well qualified to help you go from soup to nuts, especially using a VA to scale and being intentional about your back office and about your infrastructure.
Keyword right there, intentional about everything you're doing.
Right,
I'm going to ask you another question. How important do you think it is to have a mentor when you're doing stuff? Building a business, anything? Yes.
I think it's invaluable. There are some words that early on in my career that just didn't exist for me. And mentor was one of them, right? I spent a lot of time bumping around in the dark, bumping my head. It's a lot of unnecessary time to me, right? One of the things, I've got children. My son is 15, soon to be 16. Pray for me. But one of the things I do for him right now at this point, I coach the heck out of him, right? I say to him, hey, listen, look at these things in the tech space. Look at these things in the finance space. Look at these things in the VC space. Those are words that, VC is not a new term, but it's a term that I wasn't aware of early on in my career. It's a term I wasn't aware of 10 years ago. It's a term I really wasn't aware of 5 years ago. And so the earlier I can expose my son to that, the better. It's like anything else. The earlier you can get a mentor, the better, right? Because if you can identify someone who's been where you got to go, and that is absolutely what my grandmother used to say, I've been where you got to go. If you can identify somebody who's been where you got to go, then they can help you avoid the pitfalls along the way, right? They can speed it up for you, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, just through experience, exposure, and overall just connections, all of that, all the things that mentors are good for. So I think that the use of a mentor is just absolutely invaluable.
Whoever's watching this show today, hey, go get a mentor. If you're starting a business, you don't know what you're doing, don't just go through the trials and errors. Find somebody who's doing it, who went through it, who laid the blueprint, and go follow that blueprint. It's invaluable. Like you said,
Absolutely.
This is a smart man. Go find that person who leads by example, that you can look at their work and you can incorporate it, implement it into your life, your business, so you can be successful. I find that invaluable as well. I love that you're doing it with your son, because sometimes we don't think a mentor is important. I know I did when I started my business. I had a gut feeling. I just went with it, find a mentor later after making a lot of mistakes.
Right.
But yeah, that's an invaluable tip right there.
And typically they're costly mistakes, right? And sometimes it's not just about money, right? Sometimes, certainly the money mistakes matter. Those, none of us have money to just throw away. But if there are worse mistakes than that, that's just costly. And if you can get a mentor and help you avoid all of those pitfalls, then it's just so much better. Like, none of us want to waste money, but the only thing that's more valuable than money is time. And none of us want to waste time.
Exactly. All right, I got one more question for you before I like to get into the Idle and Active health round.
Okay.
What do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh man. So 5 years, I'd like to consider, in 5 years, I want the virtual staffing firm to be flourishing more so than it is now, right?
Yes.
It's good now. It's okay. I'm not as active in the VC space as I'd like to be. 5 years from now, I'd like to be one of the authorities in that space. I'll just give you an example. There are about 6,600 VC firms in the country. Of that 6,600, there are about 30 or 33 that are Black owned, where Black people, man or woman, actually has the pen, right? So they can actually write the check. And that's not to be confused with PE firms, right? In the PE firm space, there are really only probably about 5. We all know the name Robert Smith. There are a few others that are in the PE space, right? But in the VC space, there are a few more micro firms or micro funds, as well as what I consider a regular VC fund, which is, micro funds are about 15 million, VC funds are 50. But I'm wrapping up an MBA at Columbia right now, and that's my focus, and that's the space that I want to move into. I want to take the the virtual assistant concept, applied to the VC space, and develop what's called a platform company, so that again, back office support, helping VC-backed tech-enabled firms scale to the point of either acquisition by a PE firm or IPO.
Oh, that's amazing. So you got me inspired.
Hey,
Let me
man.
write my goals over here.
Hey, listen, exposure is everything. And,
Sure.
being in this program at Columbia has really exposed me to some people that I otherwise most likely would not have met. And, had the opportunity, you mentioned mentors, had the opportunity to sit down with a gentleman from the class who is out in Malibu. And we sat and talked for probably 3 hours. And just the information and the knowledge I walked away from that conversation with, it just opened my mind up, right? I mean, long story short, we're talking about a guy who sold his company the first time to a publicly held firm, and literally the firm went from doing really well, being traded on the New York Stock Exchange, to being delisted, which meant that he lost all his money, right?
That's wild.
He started all over again and did something different. And by the time he looked up, 6 years later, there was a PE firm calling him, asking him if he wanted to sell it for $800 million. And he said, "Y'all give me $800 million for what?" And they said, "Well, we want to buy your company. Here's $800 million." He said, "Absolutely not." He said, "Did that once before, trusted someone else, thought I'd never have to work again, yet here I am working. He said, look, I tell you what, I'll sell you 51% of it. Y'all put a number on that, call me back. They called him back, gave him $500 million, and he is sitting at home every day in Malibu.
That's what happens when you know your work.
Hey man, he's sitting home every day, but I tell you what, he still owns, his 49%.
Yes. That's inspiring.
Listen, and it worked out. And when I tell you, listen, as much as I like my home office, this dude's home office looks like Missile Command at NASA. You hear me? I was like, hey man, what are you doing with all this? It was like, well, one of my partners happens to be at CNN. I was like, it looks like it.
Exactly. So I need his blueprint.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you? They want to connect with you.
Man, listen, Instagram is always probably the easiest place. So at Instagram, I'm at Wesley Owens CEO. Please don't, look for my Instagram to be on and popping. It's absolutely not. But it's out there. So, inbox me. I always respond. You can certainly, find the agency at OmniPro, V as in Victor, A as in Apple. Also on Instagram, Facebook, facebook.com/OmniProVA or facebook.com/Wesley Owens. So either way, like I said, I always love to connect. Also on LinkedIn, love to connect, and keep the conversation going.
So I did promise my audience this. What are 5 reasons? Why would somebody get a VA? Just so they're aware.
5 reasons why you get a VA. Scale.
So I was looking at your site. You said to expand, to make money while you're asleep, or just some other reasons to get people to see how valuable it is.
Sure. So VA is good for scale, good for customer service, customer support, right? If you're having to edit video, audio, YouTube channels, social media management, huge. Back office, absolutely huge, right? Again, most people don't know what it takes to do payroll. Most people don't know what it takes to do accounting, bookkeeping, bank reconciliation. All the, those are the things that people just don't, I didn't go to school for that, right?
Yes.
And, oftentimes, again, small business, you go find an accounting firm, they tell you come back when you got more business. They just don't have time for you. A lot of times people, you learn when you spend time with someone. So if I can't spend time with my accountant to ask certain questions because it's like I'm in the way, right? Come on, we're in tax season. Every accountant in the world is busy today.
Yeah, exactly. You definitely want your book straight. You don't need the IRS coming after you.
Absolutely. So if you tell me you can answer my question in 4 months, that just doesn't, as a business owner, that's off-putting, right? And just overall, I like to consider, business wellness, right? Strategy, all those kinds of things. The nice part about buying or contracting with us to get a VA from us, I like to think I'm the bonus. I don't charge. But if I sit down with you and I say, hey, listen, I hear where you're trying to go. I think these are the things that you should do, and these are the things you should consider. More often than not, I know what I'm doing, right? And because I've coached business owners for so long, getting a VA and saying, hey, listen, you can implement it in these ways, use the VA for this, and this. I just think those things are bonuses.
I hope y'all writing this down. VAs are invaluable. Get you one. Expand your business. Work on the backside of it. Grow your business. Save your time. Time is valuable.
Time
well as your business.
Time is absolutely valuable. It's, people say time is money. I'm gonna tell you, time is more valuable than money.
Exactly. I cherish all my time.
Absolutely.
So let's get into the Item Active Health round. I like to ask all my guests a couple of questions since this is a health and business podcast. My first question for you, Wesley, is what is your purpose on this earth?
Wow. You just hit me right with it, huh? The P word right off the bat.
I feel like that's important. That's invaluable.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, I've tried a lot of things in life. And one of my absolute best friends told me a long time ago, he said, your purpose in life is business. He said, you don't, I was leaning toward politics. I was leaning towards medicine. I was leaning toward all these. I was, listen, I was a C student at best in a lot of those other areas. I was always an A student in my business classes. And he said, man, he said, it's in your blood. That's who you were. He said, that's who you are. That's who your family has been. He said, that's it for you. And what I've now realized is he's right. It took me a long time to realize he was right. And please, if he was watching this, I'm never going to say out loud that he was right, but can't give him that much credit. But he's right. And for me, purposes, I find my purpose in business and business dealings. I love spending time coaching kids, right? Not sports coaching, more so academic coaching, right? Life coaching. And I'm doing my best I can with my own kids. And we're going to see how that turns out in a couple of years. But I feel like that's important. I feel like it's something that our community, our children, don't have the benefit of oftentimes, because more often than not, there hasn't been a lot of exposure from the parental side. And I've been blessed to have more exposure than most, right? And because of that, I like to try and impart some of that into the next generation. Like I said, if nothing else, man, just to cut the time, right? If I can talk to you about government contracting and building a business and the importance of mentoring and networking and all those kinds of things at an early age, then I feel like we can build we'll have a more complete person. And and that's it, man. It trickles over into family life and some other stuff, but I'll leave it there.
I see that. That's amazing. Like mentorship, like doing it when they're young, getting into them. They're going to want more out of their life instead of just looking for the easy routes.
Absolutely. Listen, and there's nothing wrong with having fun. When you're young, we all did. There's nothing wrong with, listen, going to college and all that stuff and hanging out in class and all that stuff, right? My nieces are all at the college level at this point. And, I have 2 conversations with them. How's class going? How's life outside of class? Because I tell people all the time, the education happens inside and outside of the classroom. And, college is where you grow up, right? You turn 18 at your parents' house, but when you go off to college, you actually grow up. You become a young adult. And it's all those experiences. And so, nothing wrong with that. But you've got to have somebody giving you some mentorship and some career coaching and some engagement. And it's somebody who's vested in your success, right? Not a person who, no knock against career counselors and those kinds of things, but somebody who is actually vested for real in your child's success. That has to be you.
Yeah, that was the perfect answer, because like when all those experiences going to build their identity. Absolutely. As a person. So I feel like that mentorship in life, business, it all adds up. Like Absolutely. I had a friend tell me, like, I stayed in the gym 24/7 as a kid. Like I just like to work out. So like that's why I wanted to become a health coach. I'm like, that's perfect for me. I love helping people, making sure they're healthy, live healthier lives, mentally, physically, spiritually.
Sure.
And just making sure they can have their best opportunity at life in that way.
Absolutely.
But my second question. Life can be stressful. How do you lower your cortisol levels when life hits you like with that wrench?
So, let me say this to you. One of the things that when I was growing my traditional staffing company, as I like to call it, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that I was susceptible to stress. I didn't believe any of that, right? All I knew was hustle, 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 grind, 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 right? I looked up one day, I was 50 pounds heavier. I was diabetic. or actually at the time I was pre-diabetic, and I had, I was walking hypertension. How could that be? Right? Because I'm building this business, I've got all the cash in the world, right? How could that be? It's because you don't realize that you have to manage that stress. You have to let that stress out. So here's what I would say to you. I'm now 40 of those 50 pounds lighter, right? I walk every day. I don't, I'm not Mr. Olympia. Like, I'm not in the gym benching 500, but I'm outside with walking shoes on, walking. I don't care if it's cold. I don't mind it being a little rainy. I don't mind it being a little warm. I'm going to walk, 4 or 5 miles every day just so I can work up a sweat, just so that I do stay healthy. I'm not a gym rat, but I do recognize the importance of working out. I recognize the importance of getting that movement in, right? And getting that movement in is what has gotten me. It's gotten my levels down. It's gotten my weight down. And ultimately, hopefully, it's going to end up with me off of some of these meds that I'm on. So I tell people all the time now, and listen, go out and do your thing, whatever your thing is. Build that business, be the success that you want to be, right? You can absolutely do that. But at the same time, you've got to carve some time out for yourself, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. You got to do it all.
Yeah, there's a balance. There's balance. But I'm glad you realized that you started walking.
Absolutely.
Because your life is important. You can't carry out that
man,
business. Be there for your family if your health is
that's it.
deteriorating.
You don't get a replacement you.
No.
You're the
No,
only
you
you
do not.
got. That's it.
My third question, I feel like every successful person has a morning routine. What is your morning routine to start off the day?
I talk to God every morning at 5 o'clock.
You said, say that again, 5 o'clock?
I talk to God every morning at 5 o'clock.
Amen, amen.
Every morning. I don't care what else comes after that. I figure we'll figure it out together. But I talk to God every morning at 5 o'clock. And, and I'll be honest, it seems like 5 o'clock is our time. Like, I don't set an alarm for it. I'm just there, and we're there together, and it's fine. From there, my routine's probably no different from anyone else's. Coffee in the morning, I got to check the news, see what's happening locally, nationally. I rotate different channels. I probably watch 4 different news shows in 30 minutes because I'm watching local news, national news, financial news. I'm just rotating, right? And, like them or not, I'm in Atlanta. I got to check CNN too, right? It's got to happen.
Yes.
And then from there, man, it's email and it's getting the day started, right? It's interesting. Before, you would have never said, and then I got to check my social media, but you got to check your social media now too, right? Like, I need to know what's happening on the Shade Room. ATL Scoop is a real thing. I need to know these things.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to say thank you, Wesley, for being a guest on Out on Active Health Show. It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. The pleasure was entirely mine. And listen, we'd love to do it again. If you have the need, the desire, just hit me up, man. I'd love to.
Of course. I'm trying to take in all these gems and free strategies you just gave me and my audience. I want to thank the audience. It was a blessing to be your host, and I'm thankful to have given value to your life and your business. So thank you for checking in the Out on Active Health Show, and you have a wonderful night.
Amen. Thank you.